Our next storyteller is not me. Our next storyteller is Matt Davies. He grew up, he became a whole person. He always was a whole person, and he has been so generous with us that even if he tells us the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, we love him. He has a book coming out next year. He is superb as a storyteller. On you go.
Yeah, I do. I have a really hot story about Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I just wanted to welcome everybody. Thanks so much for coming. And actually now I'm sort of standing here looking here, and I have a confession to make. We had tree work done a couple days ago because we had some dead trees that were going to fall on people, and the tree guys missed one.
So get out before the insurance.
So if you hear like a cracking or creaking sound, just although you guys have good liability coverage, we're good.
It's yours.
The story that I'm going to tell is actually not mine. It's family lore, and I figured when you said "Some Like It Hot," it involves. It's my mom's story, and I just want a nod to her. I think she just disappeared back over there, but it involves a Corsican sailor. In the French merchant marine, and I'll start it off with he's in his boat, big merchant marine boat. It's World War II, and he's off the coast of the Bay of Biscayne. And it's nighttime, and he's in his underwear reading by probably not candlelight but flashlight, and all of a sudden, boom, hit by a torpedo, German U-boat. Now you might think that that's unusual, but he was actually hit by a bomb when he was in the First World War when he was 16. So this was old hat for him when he first joined up for the merchant marine. Anyway, so he finds himself in the Bay of Biscayne, and I hope if there's anybody geography nuts here, don't push me too hard. But there's a point here where it goes he's in the water for 17 hours, and he's one of a handful of survivors from his boat, and he drifts into the English Channel. I'm sorry, and he's picked up by the Royal Navy, and he was in pretty bad shape, as you can imagine, after 17 hours. Because, in a lot of boats, when you go into the water, you have to worry about sharks. But when you're in the English Channel, you have to worry about hypothermia. And anyway, he ends up in England. It's World War II, probably about 1941, I'm going to say. And he is assigned a nurse to... shouldn't say a nurse. There people basically just volunteer to help out. This guy is he can't go back to France because it's occupied by the Nazis, and so my grandmother spoke French. She was working for the Free French. I believe I screwed that one up, but anyway, she was assigned to look after him, or she volunteered to look after him. And in the interim, and this is in England now. And in the interim, she is getting communiques from France, and he learns that through my grandmother, that his wife and newborn son were killed by a bomb that was dropped by the Allies who were bombing Marseille, where his wife was living at the time, and his 3 other children. And as you can imagine, he was pretty despondent, and really despondent, because he couldn't even go back to France. And so he found comfort in the arms of my grandmother, and they had a little girl who was who I know very well. And after the war was over, he stayed around, and he had to leave. He ended up going back to France, and she was 2 years old and never knew him. And my grandmother, who's very, as you can imagine by now, is a very, very colorful young lady, and she had a lot of responsibility. She was a single mom, and when my mother was 4 years old, she was sent to boarding school, to a convent. And my son, who you've seen riding around on his trike here, is almost 4. So when I try to imagine sending your 4-year-old to a boarding school, it's just kind of mind-boggling. So, and this whole time, my mom is starting to ask questions. Where's my father? And my grandmother said, well, he was a good man, but he's gone, and he died in the war. And so my mom grew up in this convent right through to age 18, thinking, knowing, hearing stories about her father, but he was not alive. And which is, in the war, there are many, many stories like that. So, she just, she knew many people who had similar stories, so she didn't think too much about it. But obviously, missed him and heard great things about him. And when she turned 18, she goes off to college. She went to music school in London, Royal School of Music, and she's a very, very talented musician. And she met this Welsh guy who is in the back there also, and he was at the London School of Economics. And I'm probably getting my timeline screwed up, but this is now early 60s, London, and they were dangerously hip at the time. They were what was it? What would it have been called back then? Yeah,
Hippies.
no, they weren't
Mod.
hippies. No. They were mod. Like my dad had a Lambretta scooter, the pants up here and the shades. And it was all really hip poetry and beatniks. There we go, beatniks. There we go. And they fell in love and got married, and they decided for their honeymoon that they would go to Corsica, which is where my grandfather's from originally. They would go to Corsica for the honeymoon and go to the small town Baratali where he lived, and go and visit his tomb, his grave. She's never done that, never had a chance to do it. And so they did that. They went to Corsica, and it's an absolutely spectacularly beautiful place. And they went to the town, and they're walking. They park their car, and they sort of walk in sleepy. And they see a Frenchman, because Corsica's French, but like a cartoon version of a Frenchman, because wearing the sort of government issue blue overalls and onions around his neck and a baguette and a bicycle and a beret. I think I'm embellishing a little bit. And anyway, so they see him coming along, and he sort of looks at them and he says, can I help you? And my mom says, oh yeah, well, yes, we're here, I'm here from England, and I'm here to see the grave of my father, Jean Matte. Do you know where that is? Do you know who he is? And he says, yes, yeah, and he's looking at her, kind of funny, and he says, Jean Matte is not dead. He's my best friend. And so my mom spent her whole life growing up in a convent and not really knowing never knowing her father. And so he says, well, I better sit down. And he's looking at her going, and he's kind of doing the math too. He's like, okay, Jean was he's in England, and you're English, and that was that. And he's like, okay, I see what's happened here. And so they didn't get a chance to, he was living in Marseille. So he said, your father is alive. She knew she had brothers and sisters, or a brother and some sisters. And Jean was able to, Jean Petrie was able to tell her that, wow, they were like twins. She had a sister who was a twin. So she didn't get to meet them then. But a couple of weeks later, when they were back in London, they get a letter from the Red Cross, and it's a cable or whatever they had back then, and it was to my mom, and it was from her father, and it said, would you simple. We know that your father has been told that you are alive and that you're looking for him. Would it be okay to contact you? And of course it was. And so the following year, she got to meet her father and her brother and her sisters, one of whom looks exactly like her. I mean, like a twin. And the irony is that I was, I was born, my mom basically got to meet me about the same time that she got to meet her father. So, and that's the link. And it's and I know she could, my mom could probably tell the story a lot better, but it's such an amazing story that I hope I didn't massacre it.
No,
too much.
no.